Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be doing a review of the T-35. This is a currently rank 1 battle rating 1.3 heavy tank in the Russian Ground Forces tech tree and costs 2,100 golden eagles in order to purchase. This has 5 turrets in total, with 3 of those turrets containing guns of 45mm or larger. Now that being said, this review will be a bit different compared to how I do my normal reviews. This is kind of an experimental review in that I'm trying to make it more free-flowing and also providing 3 matches in particular rather than just kind of showing you highlights. That way you can kind of see how this vehicle performs more accurately visually rather than just, again, giving you clips, highlights, this, that, and the other thing like I normally do in a review. But of course, this review will still have many of the main points that I go over, including scores in several key areas, my recommendations, some strengths and weaknesses, this, that, and the other. But that being said, let me know in the comments below what you think about this new format. I might do this when it comes to certain vehicles, but either way, let's get into the review. So with that said, the T-35, as I mentioned before, is a rank 1 vehicle, costs 2,100 golden eagles, which is very expensive for what it is. It is a very large vehicle with over a 190% visibility rating. It weighs 52 tons, has 500 horsepower, so it is also very slow with lower than a 10-to-1 horsepower per ton power to weight ratio. Especially in consideration to other vehicles at this BR, they tend to be a bit quicker. Now that said, this vehicle also doesn't have all that much armor, with only 30mm at max, with most parts of this tank only having 20mm of armor covering them. Now this vehicle does benefit from having a 10-man crew, which helps increase survivability substantially, but of course each individual crew member will die fairly easily due to the easily penned armor. Now with that said, how this thing plays is more or less kind of like your standard heavy tank in a way, but instead of having a very large cannon, this has numerous kind of smaller cannons. So at any one angle with this vehicle, you will be able to shoot your enemy with 2 or 3 LMGs as well as 2 cannons. The top cannon on this vehicle, the 76mm, is a relatively low velocity, low penning cannon that should be able to still pen most vehicles at and below the BR that this sits at, whereas you also have a 45mm cannon that will be able to pen those tougher enemies or enemies that are farther away due to its higher muzzle velocity. The thing with the 45mm cannon is that you have one in the front of the tank and one in the back of the tank, so you always have one more or less ready to go, so long as the crew manning it is not dead. This more or less, again with that top-mounted fully traversable turret, gives you a complete arc of protection, which means that you should be able to kill enemies pretty easily at any angle, plus the fact that this has a relatively good turret traverse rate. With my current crew fully expert, it's around 21 degrees for the top-mounted turret with the 76mm cannon, whereas the other turrets are around 14 degrees per second. It is still pretty quick, where you should be able to respond to most threats pretty easily. Doubly so because, again, you have that full coverage, because no matter where you look, it's almost kind of like a battleship. You're going to likely have a turret there already. But kind of getting back to its role, this thing more or less kind of functions like you would expect a meme vehicle to function, a meme heavy tank at this BR. This thing more or less can go into a battle. You'll probably reach said battle after everybody else in the match, but once you do get there, you will have at least 2 cannons on any given side able to fire at people, meaning that you should be able to kill people pretty easily. This is more or less going to be a frontline tank. You can use it as a support when it comes to higher BR matches, but in general, this will be a great frontline tank, not so much a flanker or a base capper due to its low speed, but primarily as a frontline tank because, again, even though this has armor, it still has very good survivability due to the crew and also where the crew is placed inside of the vehicle. They are relatively spaced out. Now with that said, some strengths and weaknesses of this vehicle. When it comes to its strengths, I would say its overabundance of armament. It is just fantastic. Again, that 76mm cannon, you might not think it, but it has more than enough armor pen to get through a lot of enemies, especially at close range, which will lead to a surprisingly high amount of kills, especially due to its high amount of explosive filler. Even if that doesn't work, you still have a 45mm cannon, which is more than enough to be able to kill other people, and it does also have explosive filler, which is awesome. Second, this thing has great survivability. Again, in lieu of it having mediocre armor, it still has a great amount of crew, and that's really where this thing shines. It's not, again, in that it won't be penned, it's that it takes a long time for you to be able to kill this thing. Third, it has a great turret traverse rate, pretty much for all of its cannons, but primarily for its top-mounted cannon. That, along with the the placement of the cannons means that you should be able to target anyone pretty easily at any given time, and you should be able to respond to any threat, whether it's in front, to the side, or even behind you. For its force strength, of course, this is a very large target. In a way, that's kind of a weakness, but also insofar as its size is concerned, as I mentioned before, these are pretty spaced out crew. Now, they do come in clumps. Some of these turrets have 2 people standing side by side, which means that if you kill one, you'll likely kill the other. But again, there is a very small likelihood that unless you get a bomb dropped directly on this vehicle, you will not kill the entire crew, which is a huge advantage. And then, of course, finally, this has premium RP and SL bonuses. Now for its weaknesses. This is a very slow vehicle, which is obviously going to be a big problem when it comes to actually getting to a fight or even responding to lighter and faster vehicles. Second, this vehicle is very large. Believe it or not, besides making this just a very big target, whether for CAS aircraft, whether for tanks, it makes it very difficult to maneuver, especially in small spaces, so you want to consider that as well. Third, this thing has minimal armor, which means that even though your entire crew will likely not die in a single hit, you will still have groups of them dying pretty much per hit, so long as there are crew available in the shot in which you were hit. Fourth, the turrets are a little bit difficult to kind of synchronize. So the 76mm cannon actually has around half of the muzzle velocity of the 45mm cannons, which means that in order to actually aim and hit an enemy with both of them, especially at any sort of range beyond just being right in front of you, it could be a little bit tricky, especially for newer players. Now, with that said, let's get into how I rate this vehicle. For armament, I give this a solid 8.25, possibly even an 8.5 out of 10. This vehicle is surprisingly good. You wouldn't think so, but that 76mm cannon will kill far more people than you might expect. Even though it has a pretty low amount of armor pen, it is just enough where at close-ish ranges, you can actually get a lot of kills with it. And so long as it pens an enemy vehicle, you will likely get a kill with it due to its very high explosive filler, which is around 150 grams, which is phenomenal at this BR. Even if you can't get that, you also have a 45mm cannon, which will likely be able to pen the enemy, which has around 70mm of armor pen at max and has 2 times the muzzle velocity, meaning that it's better for longer range targets, which is just phenomenal. Even on top of that, you also have a plethora of LMGs, which will be able to kill open top vehicles or even some very lightly armored vehicles, which is also great. So this vehicle pretty much has a number of ways that can kill you, and it can do it very well because, of course, again, these turret traverses are pretty quick and the reload rates are typically around 4 seconds, which is great, especially considering this has a relatively inexpensive expert crew cost, which should be pretty achievable by pretty much anyone buying this vehicle. Next up, we have mobility. I'll give this thing probably a 2.75 at most out of 10. I mean, this thing is just horrendous. While it's not the slowest vehicle in the game, or even at and around this BR, it's still ridiculously slow. It has less than a 10 to 1 horsepower per ton power to weight ratio and only moves at around 28 kilometers per hour. So that's just not all that great. It does hit that speed pretty quickly, which is nice. But again, when you're trying to move around, especially in a city or something, this vehicle is just awful and is not something I want to be in when doing those maneuvers. When it comes to survivability, I'll give this a 7.75 out of 10. This thing has the benefit of having 10 crew members. If it was a smaller tank and only had like 6 crew members but the same exact amount of armor, I would probably only give this like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. It's not that great in terms of, again, armor, but the ability to survive many hits, especially considering so many vehicles at this BR have minimal HE filler in their shells, you can survive a ton of hits. Again, unless you get hit directly by a bomb, you're likely to survive a shot so long as you have at least 4 or 5 crew. This thing has phenomenal survivability, and also the crew prioritizes the main gun turrets. Essentially, your 45mm turrets will still continue working even if you only have 6 crew members, because you also have LMG turrets, of course, which those will die first and the game will kind of switch that up for you, meaning that, of course, your main guns, the ones that are most important, will have the survivors manning them, which is excellent. Overall, I'll give this a 7 out of 10. I mean, this vehicle is a genuine surprise by me. In 2 matches, I think I got something like 15 to 20 kills with it. I mean, it's just ridiculous. This thing is pretty much Stalin's Swiss Army knife, a Soviet Army knife, if you will. It can kill anyone, any number of ways, ways. I've gotten kills via the LMGs, the 76mm, the 45mm, and of course the survivability means that you can take hits and continue firing. It is just such a great thing. If your main turret crew, the 76mm turret crew, dies, you'll likely still have a 45mm turret crew trained on the enemy and they can go kill them, no problem. So there's just so many different ways that you can kill people. The rebound effect with this vehicle is great. You get hit, you can just fire right back pretty much immediately most of the time, unless you're already on the brink of death with this vehicle. It is phenomenal and a genuine surprise for me. Now with that said, do I recommend this vehicle? So while it is one of my favorite vehicles at this BR, I mean almost immediately it became one of my favorite vehicles at 1.3. It might be my favorite 1.3BR vehicle, but it costs 2,100 Golden Eagles. You can get many vehicles in War Thunder for fewer than 2,100 Golden Eagles, including the BTD Destroyer, which is a rank 3 aircraft. You can get the T-14 assault tank, which is a rank 3 heavy tank. You can get so many vehicles out there for less than this, or even just slightly above, like the German T-34, where they are much more worth it in terms of grinding than this vehicle. Now, if like me, you just kind of have an excess of Golden Eagles, for me personally, I get some by being a content creator and Gaijin gives them to me. On a sale is when I purchased this, and I did not look back. It is a fantastic vehicle if you have disposable income, and because of that, I recommend it for people who have disposable GE, especially if you want to buy it on a sale. It is just a fantastic meme vehicle, incredibly fun, cannot say enough good things about it in that way, but insofar as practicality is concerned, insofar as grinding through the tech tree, there are better purchases. So yes, I do recommend this for people who have disposable income, and I'd give it my Tankenstein seal of approval, but there are, again, more practical, better purchases out there if you actually want to grind through the tech tree, or even if you want a Silver Lion or RP grinder. I mean, this is just not going to do that all too well, but insofar as fun is concerned, this might even beat the Char 2C insofar as premium rank 1s are concerned. It can just kill so easily. It is a meme tank and then some, and again, I love the T-35. So that said, thanks so much for watching. If you guys don't mind, please let me know what you guys think about this format in the comments below. It was a bit longer than I expected it to be, but again, this was totally unscripted, new format. I want to know what your thoughts are. But either way, thanks again, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.